God! Oh my God!
On August 25th, Phoenix, Arizona, USA suffered a devastating monsoon storm. The storm swept in, bringing with it howling winds, torrential rain, and hail, creating an unprecedented disaster. The wind howled, and the fierce air current was like a ruthless sharp blade, chopping down the tall and straight trees on both sides of the street. I saw those giant trees falling down one after another. The heavy trunks were as light as withered branches in the strong wind. They fell to the ground one after another, crushing the houses and vehicles on the roadside. The tilted tree trunks and broken branches and leaves were swallowed by the strong wind and turned into fragments all over the sky, scattered on the messy streets. At the same time, heavy rain poured down like a waterfall in the storm, washing away the dust on the streets and raising a misty curtain of water. The most frightening thing is the rolling hail falling from the sky. These ice cubes smashed down like bullets, smashing through the roof of the car, shattering the glass windows, hitting the houses and the road, making a deafening noise and constantly splashing waves. Seeing this scene, the residents were all horrified. Many people have hurriedly hid indoors to stay away from the raging winds, rain, and hail. They were worried about the safety of their houses and nervously watched the situation outside the window. The first thing I did was make sure the door was locked and the kids were inside and away from the windows, said resident Valentino Guerrero. Even sturdy houses cannot withstand the destructive power of this storm. A school across the street was blown down into the field along with a towering tree. A resident named Tisha Patterson said in surprise, "I have never seen a storm like this. Our decades-old tree was uprooted and split into two within 10 minutes. Half. In her yard, half of the tree fell on her house, and the other half's branches pinned two cars. The neighbor across the street suffered the same fate, with their fence blown down by the wind. This mess not only appeared in residents' homes, but also the buildings on both sides of the street were damaged. A neighbor's greenhouse had holes punched in by hail. The storm was like a ruthless god of destruction, sweeping through and destroying everything in its path. However, in these ruins, the beauty of human nature is also revealed. As residents recovered from the damage to their homes, friends and family came to lend a helping hand and offer support. It really makes a difference, having some good friends, family and community members willing to help and support, said resident Tisha Patterson. This destructive storm caused by climate change not only swept through Phoenix, but also affected other nearby towns, such as Queen Creek, Santan Valley, Chandler, and Gilbert. The National Weather Service issued multiple severe thunderstorm warnings that afternoon, warning local residents of the coming severe weather. Near Woodrat Mountain, 9 miles west of Medford, a powerful thunderstorm was moving northeast at 20 miles per hour and was expected to cause severe damage to vehicles and structures. The warning also includes Medford, Center Point, Talent, Jacksonville, Lockshan Peak, White City, and Phoenix. The meteorological department called on residents to immediately move to interior rooms on the lowest floors of buildings to ensure their own safety. The storm not only wreaked havoc on the ground, but also caused great damage in the air. Phoenix's Sky Harbor International Airport was severely damaged, with flights delayed for 30 to 45 minutes and eventually all flights were grounded until 6:30 p.m. Ground transportation has also been severely affected. Heavy rain caused poor visibility near Loop 202 in Tempe, but fortunately, major roads were not closed. However, in other areas, strong winds caused downed trees and downed power lines, causing some temporary road closures. It is reported that Interstate 287 was closed in both directions east of Florence. The storm also caused widespread power outages. In the East Valley area alone, nearly 5,000 SRP customers were without power. Despite the company's efforts to restore power by 6:30 p.m., thousands of customers in North Tempe and South Scottsdale did not have power restored until after 9 p.m. In addition to severely damaging physical facilities, the storm also had a huge psychological impact on local residents. One resident named Tisha Patterson recalled, "The rain was so heavy that we couldn't see anything outside the window. We heard some things falling, but the hail was so heavy. We didn't realize the whole tree was falling." Trees have fallen down, Valentino Guerrero, another resident, also said that they have been careful to stay indoors and away from dangerous windows. The destructive power of this storm was unprecedented. Houses, vehicles, trees, greenhouses, no one was spared. This once prosperous neighborhood is now in ruins and devastated. Even the sturdiest buildings cannot withstand the ravages of strong winds, rain, and hail. What is gratifying is that in the face of this disaster, local residents did not fall into despair. On the contrary, they responded actively, helped each other, and got through the difficulties. Friends, family, and community members have reached out to provide support and comfort to the affected families. This spirit of solidarity and mutual help is undoubtedly a bright color in this disaster. However, the root cause of this storm lies in the environmental degradation caused by climate change. Research shows that environmental instability caused by global warming is driving stronger updrafts, ultimately forming more ferocious hail. This trend will continue in the next few decades, posing a serious threat to the eastern United States. Hail size and frequency are expected to increase significantly in the east, with the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Northeast being hardest hit. Traditionally, hail-prone areas will see a decreasing trend due to rising temperatures. This drastic change in weather patterns undoubtedly brings huge challenges to local residents and governments. Thank you for liking, leaving comments, subscribing, and turning on the little bell. We will update every day. Currently, local governments and meteorological departments are strengthening their response capabilities and reminding residents to be vigilant at all times by issuing various early warnings. At the same time, mutual help within the community is also particularly important. Only when residents and authorities work together to continuously improve prevention awareness and emergency measures can they better cope with hail disasters caused by this increasingly severe climate change. Undoubtedly, this storm dealt a heavy blow to Phoenix and the surrounding areas, but in the face of the disaster, the spirit of unity displayed by the local people undoubtedly brought a glimmer of light to the ruins. I believe that as long as the top and bottom work together, we will be able to overcome the difficulties and rebuild our homeland. At the same time, the entire society must also face the threat of climate change and take effective measures to reduce the risks and losses of hail disasters in the future. Hail disaster is a natural disaster that often causes serious losses to local residents and property. First of all, from a geographical point of view, countries and regions close to tropical and subtropical regions are more prone to hail disasters. For example, the Philippines, located in the tropical region, has a large number of hail events every year. According to statistics, there were more than 20 hail attacks in the Philippines in 2021. Causing serious damage to local agriculture and infrastructure. The Midwestern region of the United States, located in the subtropical region, including Colorado, Kansas and other places, has suitable climate conditions and has a large number of hailstorms every year, which has dealt a heavy blow to local residents and economic development. Secondly, terrain is also an important factor affecting the occurrence of hail. Mountainous and hilly areas are more likely to form strong convective weather, leading to frequent hailstorms. Taking South Korea as an example, due to its location on a peninsula and many mountains, hail disasters are common in South Korea. According to statistics, dozens of serious hail events occur in South Korea every year, causing direct economic losses of more than 5 billion won in 2022 alone. At the same time, climate change has also intensified the occurrence of hail disasters. The continued rise in global temperatures has led to frequent extreme weather events in some areas, and hail events have become more violent and frequent. Taking Japan as an example, the country has suffered more and more severe hail disasters in recent years. In 2019, a large-scale hail event occurred that caused losses of more than 1 billion yen. It is worth mentioning that some economically underdeveloped areas are also more susceptible to hail disasters. This is because the disaster prevention and reduction capabilities in these areas are relatively weak, and their ability to withstand disasters is limited. For example, in the Republic of Chad, located in Central Africa, hail disasters occur several times every year, causing serious damage to local agricultural production and people's lives. However, due to the lack of sufficient financial and technical support, the country's disaster resilience is relatively weak. In addition, some countries and regions located in coastal areas are also more susceptible to hail attacks. Hail often accompanies tropical storms and typhoons, so coastal areas are more susceptible to damage. For example, island countries such as the Philippines and Japan have multiple hail events every year, causing serious losses. What cannot be ignored is that some high-latitude areas also have a higher probability of hail. Due to the cold climate in the Siberian region of Russia and central Canada, it is easy to form environmental conditions conducive to the occurrence of hail. Therefore, hail disasters of varying degrees occur in these regions every year. Of particular importance is the fact that global climate change is exacerbating the frequency and intensity of hail disasters. According to predictions from the United Nations Panel on Climate Change, by 2050, about 40% of the world's population will face the risk of severe hail disasters. Hail is an extreme weather event in nature that can sometimes cause huge losses. There have been many serious hail attacks in history, causing heavy casualties and property losses. First of all, what needs attention is the hail disaster that occurred in Colorado, USA, on July 3, 1986. On the same day, a huge hailstorm that lasted for more than an hour hit Colorado Springs and other places. The diameter of the hail was up to 7 centimeters, causing huge damage to the area. According to statistics, the hail disaster caused more than $200 million in direct economic losses. More than 1,000 people were injured, and there were also casualties. Sadly, this incident has dealt a heavy blow to the lives and properties of local residents, and many people's houses and vehicles have been severely damaged. Secondly, it is worth mentioning the hail disaster that occurred in Buenos Aires, Argentina on July 11, 1976. On that day, a huge hailstorm that lasted for 2 hours hit the provincial capital and surrounding areas. The hailstones were up to 12 centimeters in diameter and weighed 1 kilogram, causing serious consequences. According to statistics, the disaster caused more than 1,500 injuries and 28 deaths. At the same time, more than 100,000 houses and 200,000 vehicles were damaged. The disaster also dealt a heavy blow to the local economic development, with total losses reaching $1.2 billion. Shockingly, this hail event had a huge impact on the lives of local residents, and many people are still unable to get out of the haze. Again, special attention needs to be paid to the hail disaster that occurred in Texas, USA, on April 10, 1999. On that day, an hour-long hailstorm swept through the central region of the state. The diameter of the hailstones was unbelievably large, with some reaching a height of 15 centimeters. The hail event caused more than $2 billion in direct economic losses and severe damage to a large number of vehicles and homes. It is worth noting that this disaster also caused 5 deaths and hundreds of injuries, many of which were in critical condition. This hail disaster has dealt a heavy blow to the local people and the government, highlighting the terrible power of hail disasters. At the same time, what is more noteworthy is the hail disaster that occurred in Moscow, Russia on May 31, 2010. On that day, a hail event that lasted for 40 minutes swept across the Russian capital and its surrounding areas, with the diameter of the hail reaching up to 8 centimeters. The disaster damaged more than 6,000 vehicles and injured more than 1,000 people, including at least 10 deaths. This hail event also caused damage to more than 2,000 buildings, causing huge losses to local people's lives. What is heartbreaking is that this hail disaster also had a serious impact on the infrastructure construction and urban operation of the Russian capital. In addition, what cannot be ignored is the hail disaster that occurred in Albi, Canada on July 8, 2003. On the same day, a huge hailstorm that lasted for 20 minutes hit many cities in the province, with hailstones up to 7 centimeters in diameter. The disaster caused more than 400 million Canadian dollars in direct losses, hundreds of people were injured, and more than 200 homes and more than 1,800 vehicles were damaged. What is even more sad is that this hail incident also caused the death of 2 people. This disaster also highlighted the serious impact of hail disasters on the lives of local residents and the operation of the city. What should be paid more attention to is the hail disaster that occurred in Algeria on July 1, 2018. On the same day, a hailstorm that lasted for 45 minutes hit the eastern Algerian city of Kone Bingeda, with hail up to 10 centimeters in diameter. The disaster caused at least 3 deaths, hundreds of injuries, and serious damage to a large number of houses and vehicles. What is even more distressing is that the hail event also had a huge impact on local agricultural production and infrastructure, and some areas were without power for many days. These highlights the heavy blow that hail disasters bring to economically underdeveloped areas. More importantly, we need to pay special attention to the fact that climate change has intensified the frequency and intensity of hail disasters. For example, on June 22, 2019, Batesville, Texas, suffered an extremely large hailstone with a diameter of 18 centimeters, causing direct losses of more than $1.5 billion. This means that in the future we need to pay more attention to the prevention and response to hail disasters and take effective measures to protect people's lives and property. When faced with hail attacks, how should we take effective self-rescue and avoidance measures? First of all, what needs to be paid attention to is to make adequate preparations in advance. According to the monitoring and warning information of the meteorological department, once it is discovered that hail weather may occur in the local area, necessary preventive measures must be taken immediately. The first thing is to move to a safe place in time, especially avoid rooms with glass windows, and stay away from areas prone to hail attacks such as open spaces and parking lots. Also, close all doors and windows to prevent damage from hail impacts. It is worth mentioning that in areas where hail is likely to occur, people should take the initiative to protect important equipment and vehicles at home, such as using protective nets or plastic coverings to minimize losses. Secondly, more attention should be paid to taking correct emergency evacuation measures when hail strikes. Once hail strikes, the safest thing to do is to immediately take shelter indoors in an innermost room or in a sturdy building such as a basement, away from windows. Not only will this prevent you from being hit by hail, it will also minimize the damage caused by hail. It is worth noting that if you happen to be outdoors, you should quickly find shelters around you, such as cars, trees, and other shelters, and try to squat down to protect your head and important parts of your body. Also, be careful to stay away from tall buildings or trees to avoid being hit by them or being hit by hail. At the same time, it is more important to take correct emergency rescue measures after hail. Once the hailstorm is over, everyone must quickly check the safety of themselves and their families, and call the rescue hotline for instructions immediately if necessary. It is especially important that property such as houses and vehicles be inspected and repaired as necessary as soon as possible to avoid further damage. In addition, local governments and relevant departments, also the emergency rescue mechanism, should be activated immediately. Staff should be dispatched to conduct on-site inspections, and rescue forces should be organized to restore infrastructure and production order in the disaster-stricken areas as soon as possible. What is easily overlooked is that after the disaster, psychological counseling and assistance for the victims must be strengthened to help them get out of the haze of trauma as soon as possible. What cannot be ignored is that we must make full use of various channels to obtain early warning information for hail disasters. For example, pay close attention to the early warning information issued by the local meteorological department, and forward it to various social media platforms in a timely manner so that more people can learn about the disaster situation in a timely manner. In addition, residents should take the initiative to pay attention to some professional weather forecast apps and websites, which can provide more accurate hail warning information. More importantly, the government and relevant departments must establish a sound hail disaster early warning system to achieve real-time monitoring and timely forecasting of disaster dynamics so as to provide a strong guarantee for the safety of people's lives and property. The first priority is to improve the public's awareness of hail disaster prevention and self-rescue and mutual rescue capabilities. On the one hand, governments at all levels and relevant departments should increase the publicity and popularization of hail disaster prevention and response knowledge so that more people can understand the dangers and master self-rescue measures. On the other hand, various emergency drills should be organized and carried out to improve the public's emergency response and self-rescue capabilities in the face of hail disasters. What needs special attention is to provide targeted guidance for some special groups such as the elderly and children to ensure that everyone can take correct risk avoidance measures when a disaster occurs. In response to the increasingly serious hail disaster, we not only need to take traditional prevention and avoidance measures, but also make full use of the latest scientific and technological means. At present and in the future, some cutting-edge black technologies are or will become powerful weapons for hail disaster prevention. Let's explore the application prospects of these emerging technologies. Thank you for liking, leaving a message, subscribing, and turning on the little bell. We will update the latest news from around the world every day.